Have you ever stepped into a room so breathtaking it stole your voice, only to notice, seconds later, a stench strong enough to singe your eyebrows? Welcome to 17th century French royalty, golden halls, silken walls, and air that could flatten livestock. Versailles, for all its chandeliers and polished marble, wasn't a palace of purity. Life for noblewomen behind the brocade was far from clean. Today, we peel back the powdered facade to reveal 5 grim, unsettling hygiene truths about royal women. Prepare yourself, some things can't be unsmelled. Let's begin with the most fundamental human ritual, washing. While today we link bathing to health and self-care, nobility once saw it as a threat. Baths were treated with the same caution we'd give to drinking puddle water near a slaughterhouse. Doctors, armed with superstition and guesswork, warned that warm water opened the body to disease. Bathhouses, once commonplace, were now condemned as dens of moral decay. The church reinforced the view, equating bathing with vanity. Slowly, society rejected cleanliness. Few noblewomen had private baths, and those who did often avoided them. Instead, washing meant dabbing hands, faces, and necks with cloths soaked in spirits, vinegar, or spit. The goal: wipe off dirt without exposing the body too much. If a full bath happened, often due to illness or ceremony, it was communal. Families reused the same tub in turns. Men went first. By the time women entered, the water resembled a lukewarm stew of sweat, grime, and sediment from noble behinds. The result? Scents no perfume could bury. Corridors steeped in sweat, damp silk, and animal fat. Foreign visitors described Versailles as equal parts fragrance and foulness. The worst part? This was considered normal. Royal women glittered in embroidered gowns and stiff bodices, but their skin hadn't seen clean water in weeks. Walking icons of elegance, marinated in filth. Now onto another royal reality, going to the bathroom. Not exactly a mural-worthy topic, but central to palace life. One might assume that a palace with mirrored salons and gold-dipped ceilings mastered basic plumbing. It didn't. Versailles was magnificently ill-equipped. Functional toilets? Practically mythical. Instead, noblewomen used chamber pots, ceramic or metal vessels tucked behind curtains or under seats. When nature called, a lady squatted or perched, often with a maid lifting layers of skirts, behind screens, stairwells, or in dark corners of ballrooms. Privacy was a fantasy. Dignity, even more so. The pot's contents? Dumped out windows or stairwells, sometimes hitting the courtyard, or worse. Some courtiers skipped the pot altogether, relieving themselves in gardens or behind statues. The stench? Legendary. Eventually, a royal decree mandated cleaning the halls once a week. That was the improvement. Toilet paper didn't exist. Women wiped with fabric scraps, leaves, or straw, reused and barely washed. Underwear wasn't standard. Multiple skirts and corsets made things harder. Bodily functions had to be quiet. When they weren't, shame followed. Urinary infections, skin rashes, and worse were common, but unspoken. These women were symbols, not people. And symbols didn't complain about bladders. Even queens weren't spared. Their close stools, lavishly carved chairs hiding a pot, offered no privacy. Someone still emptied it. It still stank. They may have sat on thrones, but none of them flushed. And now, the crowning glory, literally. Think of those extravagant hairstyles, powdered towers adorned with feathers, pearls, even miniature ships. Beautiful, yes. But underneath? A war zone. Hair in the royal court wasn't just fashion, it was survival. And real hair had limits. It thinned, aged, fell out. So wigs became mandatory. Massive, stiffened wigs made from horsehair or human hair were pinned tight to the scalp. Once attached, they stayed on for days, or longer. What lay beneath was misery. Pomades made from lard or beef fat coated the scalp, trapping heat and oil. These wigs became ideal habitats for lice, who bred freely, laid eggs, and gnawed at skin. The results: sores, scabs, infection. Scratching was delicate work. Ladies used lice picks, long silver tools they carried to dinners, discreetly jabbing at their itchy scalps mid-toast. Servants reapplied powder, combed through crust, and refreshed the scent. But the rot remained. Comfort was irrelevant. Poor women shaved their heads to avoid lice. But noble women? They wore their suffering like a crown. Servants handled the grim upkeep. Powder was reapplied daily. Scented oils tried, and failed, to cover the odor. Combs dragged through crusted scalps. Removing the wig? Almost unthinkable. Wigs weren't about comfort, they were about image. To appear bareheaded, or worse, visibly balding, was social suicide. In Versailles, your hair didn't just reflect who you were, it screamed how far you'd go to stay significant. Now, let's move from scalps to stomachs. Because if you thought wigs were a breeding ground for pests, wait until we step into the royal kitchens. From afar, Versailles banquets looked divine. Roasted peacocks with feathers, towers of candied fruits, fountains of wine. Dishes fit for gods. But behind the grandeur? A microbial nightmare. The palace kitchens were plagued, not by enemies, but by sewage. Plumbing was so bad, raw waste often leaked into food areas. Human waste occasionally reached the Queen's private kitchen. Refrigeration? Fantasy. Food sat out for hours, sometimes days. Meat rotted. Fruit swarmed with flies. Rodents ran wild. Spoiled food wasn't tossed, it was masked with spices, sugar, or alcohol. The result? Gastrointestinal chaos. Courtiers constantly battled stomach troubles. Diarrhea was routine. Vomiting after a meal wasn't excess, it was a desperate purge. And then there were the parasites. Tapeworms were common. Undercooked meat and filth brought these intruders to life. Nobles walked around unknowingly hosting worms feet long. Even Louis XIV is said to have expelled a 6-inch tapeworm, a fitting metaphor for a kingdom bloated with decadence. And the women? They sat through feasts like porcelain dolls, eating delicately, smiling politely, while fighting cramps and nausea under suffocating corsets. Food should be joy. At Versailles, it was a risk. And now, the most intimate ordeal of all, a moment that should have been private, gentle, and sacred. But in royal courts, childbirth wasn't care. It was theatre, and the mother was center stage. In France, queens gave birth in rooms filled with people. Courtiers, clergy, nobles, even the curious, crammed in. Not to help, but to observe. Every cry and contraction was public. Why? Fear. Fear that a girl or stillborn might be swapped for a boy. Fear of betrayal. So royal women surrendered their privacy, their pain turned into spectacle. Queen Marie-Therese gave birth in front of so many people that her chamber felt more like a marketplace than a birthing room. No curtain. No privacy. Just heat, pressure, and sweat. When Marie Antoinette gave birth, she fainted, overwhelmed by the suffocating air and the crush of onlookers closing in. And that wasn't rare. Women passed out. They screamed. Some died, publicly, surrounded by watching eyes, yet untouched by comfort. Medical care was primitive. No anesthesia. No sterilization. No understanding of infection. Instruments were reused without washing. Hands went uncleaned. Germ theory hadn't arrived. What should have been life's beginning often turned into a gamble for mother and child. 1 in 3 children died before age 3. Mothers constantly faced deadly infections, hemorrhages, and complications no one could treat. Still, they were expected to smile once the heir was born, no matter the trauma left behind. And it wasn't just the pain, it was the performance. In those vast halls of power, motherhood wasn't sacred. It was a trial. And failure was not an option. Here's the truth. Behind velvet drapes, bejeweled crowns, and oil portraits, there were women, exhausted ones. They were queens, yes. But also blistered, bitten, bloated, infected, and bleeding. They smiled through cramps, scratched under lice-filled wigs, and walked endless corridors in gowns soaked in weeks of sweat and silence. Their bodies weren't revered, they were used. Coated in toxic powders, fed spoiled food, forced to carry heirs for a nation that didn't protect them. Even rest and hygiene were luxuries wrapped in shame. History remembers their names, but not their ashes. Their portraits hide the scars from lead makeup. Their gowns conceal the scent of pain. Their legends erase the suffering behind the pose. These were not divine beings. They were women turned into myths. But myths don't get infections. Myths don't bleed through their corsets. Myths don't lose clumps of hair into the hands of silent maids. This isn't to judge the past, but to reveal it. These 5 disturbing habits aren't just about filth. They expose how power demanded perfection and returned silence. How appearances erased humanity. So next time you see a royal portrait and marvel at the elegance, ask yourself, what did it cost? And if this history gave you a new lens to see past the silk and sparkle, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts below. What does it mean to wear a crown when the true weight isn't gold, but everything it hides?